mountains beyond the Okanagan? The answer is a humble greengrocer by the name of Pasquale. Tonight on Okanagan Pioneers and Places, we hear Pasquale's story from a former player with the Montreal Alouettes and Calgary Stampeders, a general manager of the BC Lions, a president of the Vancouver Whitecaps Soccer Club, a social credit MLA, Pasquale's son, Herb Capozzi. Welcome to Okanagan Pioneers and Places. Mike Roberts with you, and our storyteller tonight is Herb Capozzi. We're talking about the contribution the Capozzi family has made to the Okanagan. You would be the middle son of three, right?
That's correct.
So before you Joe, after you Tom?
No, yes.
Yeah.
After me, Tom. Yes.
After you Tom?
Before you Joe, right.
What we want to do, I guess, is head back to where Cap Capozzi, Pasquale Capozzi, came from, and what era was it? Where did the Capozzi family herald from?
From Italy, lower Italy, mid-Italy, near Naples, a place called, it's near Avellino, and the town is a little paese called Santo Stefano del Sole, St. Stephen of the Sun, beautiful little village that sits up in the mountains near Pompeii. By the way, the reason he left Italy was that there was a young fellow in Italy who my dad thought was the dumbest fellow he'd ever met, who had come out about 2 years before my dad did, and had come back 2 years later with $500. I mean, a fortune, an absolute fortune. And as my dad said, he was so dumb, he said, I figured if he could have made $500, I am going to make a fortune.
So off he leaves his home?
He leaves his home, parts with...
never to return, perhaps?
Well, at that stage, he certainly does have no idea of returning, but that wouldn't be quite right. He was definitely going to go back someday and prove he was smarter and better, and you know how well he had done.
Now, he had a kind of a, well, at least a reference to a career, the Mano.
Oh, right. A Mano is an Italian, I guess, part of the Italian civil body, and it's like a lawyer who is responsible for deal making, primarily in the sale of cattle and mules in this particular case. And this is his father that did this.
His father had experience with mules.
Yes. And the idea was that, and his function was, a mano's function was, if two people are trying to sell, I'm trying to convince you, and I'm the mano over here, and I'm the guy selling, you're buying, and I've got you, and I'm trying to get you to, and I'm trying to say, you know, you're right, this right, the price is this and that, and all I'm trying to do is to get that final shake so that I can put my hand.
That's the mano's hand.
The mano has done it, that's a deal. I mean, it's better than a lawyer, it's better than a document, because you could not break the mano's word. And so
Pasquale comes to Canada with
that background.
That mano background.
That's right, from his father. And so, but as a result of it, it sort of, I guess, was something that didn't help him when he came here, because he lands in Nelson, and you know, I guess days were colder there, but it's still pretty cold in Nelson. And the first job he can get is driving mules. And so they think he's an expert because his father knew about mules, but he didn't like work. My father didn't like work very much. And so what he does is he's trying to get these mules to pull out in the middle of the woods, and he's in the forest, he's trying to move wood. And of course the mules are so stubborn. And he tells me the story of falling down in tears. I mean, he doesn't know anybody, he can't speak the language, and he's talking to the mules in Italian, saying, "Ma che stupido, how stupid can you be? What are you doing to me? I'm dying out here. This is the end of the world." And so, but fortunately, he went from there and he got a job on the CPR. That was, as I said, what he started out with. And but the first job he had was, he was responsible for the Irish foreman. And he had to take him into town on Friday nights on one of the little pumpers deal. And this Irishman had a reputation for being a great drinker. And so my dad's biggest part of his job was getting him out of the saloons or picking him off the ground and bringing him back. And he thought that was a pretty good job because he didn't have much to do, and yet it was very responsible.
But he didn't stay there. As a matter of fact, he lost his job with the railway in a strike.
Yeah, there was a big strike, and of course, he had no idea what a strike was about. It was just, there were just good guys, bad guys, and so these people who were brought in, as he calls it, the scabs, they're scabs,
yeah.
and they were supposedly bad people, and he can remember with such, as though, or did remember as though it was yesterday all the time, that of throwing this rock at this one guy and hitting him, and somehow thinking, my God, what have I done? But what he had done was, as a result of it, he eventually didn't get hired back. Nobody did. Everybody that was on the strike breakers didn't get hired back. So he never went back on the railway. But many years later, the president of the CPR is here in Kelowna, and he goes up to my dad to say hello, and my dad says, I know you. He says, I used to work for you. And the guy says, oh, my goodness, you must have had a big job. He said, no, I never had a big job. But he said, I'm glad I left.
I wouldn't be where I am today.
Exactly.
We're going to have to take a break here, but when we come back, we're right at the beginning of the 20th century. We're in the boundary country. We're in that mineralized belt. But he always wants to be, this Pasquale Capozzi wants to be a grocer. And we're going to pick the story up there when we come back from this break. Welcome back to Pioneers and Places. Mike Roberts with Herb Capozzi, talking about the Capozzi family, the legacy to the Okanagan. Pasquale, early part of the century, is visiting some of the roughest towns in British Columbia, Revelstoke, Nelson. These were not gentle places.
I think you're being very polite when you say visiting. I think he was stumbling from one because I told you he didn't like to work very hard, and he gets a job place here, burns the whole sawmill down, gets other jobs here, and finally lands in Revelstoke. Now, understand what Revelstoke was in those days. It was a wild mining town on the railway, and the laws were very wide open. Saloons, everything, bawdy houses, and everything else. But he's still looking to find something. And the story that's quite interesting, and probably tells more about it than anything I could say then, is that there were these houses of ill repute. And one day he meets a young lady from them who, he was a fine-looking man and a young man, and who sort of took a shine to him in the way, and nothing more than that, my dad swears. But she says that, he was looking for a job, and she says, well, maybe I can introduce you to the madam of the house, because she's a very fine, nice lady, and maybe she will have something you can do. So as my dad tells the story, he does go there with her, and when the madam asks him, what can he do, he says, I can't do very much. And she said, well, I need a bookkeeper. And he says, well, I can do a bookkeeper. I can hardly read or write. I only got the grade of 4 in Italy. So she says, well, I don't think I can help you, but she was a very kind lady, and gives him like what would be $5. So he takes the $5 and he buys some fruit and he starts selling it in a little cart, and then you get a cart, and then it gets bigger, and eventually he gets a job in a grocery store and goes on, and it eventually leads to that. And the reason I'm telling you is that eventually, many years later, when we sell the winery, and my dad is sitting around now with like the usual kind of a closing, if you can picture it. Picture the big room with the round table, lawyers and accountants all around like this. And I'm here, my brothers are here, my dad's here, sitting next to one of the lawyers from the company that Standard Brands that bought us out for about $7 or $8 million. The documents are moving. My dad is looking at that, and he's signing it. Now, he didn't sign a signature. He really almost put it like an X. Like he didn't really write his name out, because as he wasn't very good at writing. So the lawyer is looking at him like this, and he says, Mr. Capozzi, you're supposed to put your name there. He says, that's not my name. And he says, no, but you have to write your name. And he says, well, I can't write it very good. And he said, Mr. Capozzi, he said, you mean to say you can't read or write? And he says, well, I guess that's right. He said, my God, we're paying you $7 million today. He said, what do you think, how much money could have made if you could read or write? My dad looks him straight in the eye and said, if I could have read or write, I would have been a bookkeeper in a whorehouse.
We never got beyond that.
So, so he sort of put it in the level of where he was.
He put it into the right.
He becomes a grocer, all right. He becomes a grocer in Revelstoke by a family by the name of Bregalici, and he loves it. And this is what he always wanted to do. He liked the people. He liked it because he said it was a place that I can wear it, don't have to take my hat off to anybody, but I can put my hat on anytime I like. I mean, he was his own boss.
Yeah.
Loved that. And so he gets a job there, and then he gets invited to open a grocery store in Trail for the company there.
Cominco?
Cominco, and he said the biggest mistake I ever made was in those days there used to be script for a lot of them would pay with Cominco script. And he said, I wouldn't take it because I didn't think the company would last. He said, you think I made some money? He said, if I kept that script, he said, I would have made a lot of money. And then he moves on to and has a chance to open his own grocery store in a place called Phoenix. Now, this isn't Phoenix, Arizona. This is Phoenix near Grand Forks and
Coppertown, huge copper.
And at that time, it's just the start of World War I, and it's a booming town. It's opening up with this great copper mine that's so busy, and he opens his grocery store there. And the big thing that happens there, of course, is that's where he meets my mother, who had come with another Italian who was a shoemaker and had opened a place there. So they're in Phoenix. He has a grocery store in which he's doing very well, but the war ends, and at that stage he has to make a decision. So he's made a decision already about who he's going to take with him. He convinces my mother's mother to let him marry her daughter if he finds a place for them all to move. So he scouts all over. He's trying to find a place that won't have the ups and downs of a mining city. So he prowls around and goes up into the Caribou, and he goes down in, and finally he comes to this place called Kelowna. And as he's driving through Kelowna, he likes the look of it, likes the feel of it, but right on the corner of Bernard and Ellis, there was at that time just a field, and there is a farmer growing tomatoes. Now, you got tomatoes Italian, very fit right away. But as he drives there, he realizes that they're selling tomatoes. And he's still going to go back, and he's still in Phoenix, but he decides if he can bring some tomatoes back, he can make some money selling the tomatoes. So he asks the boy to bring him a big apple box filled with tomatoes, which the son does. And the boy brings it over, and he says, well, how much is that? And the boy says, that's $1. And my dad, and this is the only part of the story I don't believe, because my dad says he looked at him and said, are you sure that's the right price? Thinking it was not enough, because my dad would never have done that. But he says he did. So now the boy goes to the father, and the father comes over and says, is that too much? And my father figures it out that if he can buy tomatoes at $1 a box, no Italian will ever starve to death in Kelowna. And so he makes the decision on something as simple as that. So that's why I'm a Kelowna boy. I mean, that's it.
Take a break here. When we come back, all sorts of things are created as a result of this new location. Kelowna Wines, the Capri Mall. We're going to talk about that in the last segment of Pioneers and Places. Welcome to Okanagan Pioneers and Places. Mike Roberts with Herb Capozzi talking about the Capozzi family. And this picture right here says it all. There's Pasquale Capozzi in his dream, his own grocery store.
Come true.
I mean, in Kelowna.
Absolutely come true.
Yeah. He sells groceries, but he also takes groceries in from the small producers.
Absolutely correct. And I have to tell you about that. We take in everything, like chickens and so on. Now, let me tell you very quickly about my mother and how she fitted into this, because my mother was a woman who believed hospitality was food, and she also had the myths of, like, Jewish families and so on, Italian families, that chicken soup was what made everything. And one of the things they used to take in here, of course, was live chickens. And one time, they take 2 chickens home, my mother, and you know, they're live.
Yep.
And of course, what happens is one of the chickens gets sick, and so my mother kills the healthy chicken, makes chicken soup for the sick chicken. Now, you got to understand that these are the things that came out of that. He loved the store. It was a good store, proud store, but
great
he moves
location.
On. Right next to him, location, location, location,
yeah.
are the 4 people who basically ran the city at that time. It's Chapin's Cafe, Meikle on the other side, and W.E.C. Bennett has the big hardware store on further down closer to the water. He's moved up slightly now from this actual location, but they become very close friends, and from that they start the beginnings of the winery.
Now, Kelowna Wines, it wasn't called that in the beginning, and
No.
they were making wines out of apple, really. That was...
Well, understand the times, and we're now into the very early part of, the end of 1920s, and we're going into basically the Depression years.
Yeah.
There was no market for the apples, no market for anything. The big slogan at that moment was a strike in that year of 1930. On the ground, cent a pound or on the ground. That was the price of apples at that time. Out of Winnipeg, out of Italy, by way of Winnipeg, comes a gentleman by the name of Getzi, who is a scientist and a chemist who has developed what he thinks is a great plan to make wine out of apples. And so they begin this venture, the winery, which was called the processing in apples and so on and everything else. And they're making wine out of apples. And that was where W.A.C. Bennett came in, because he and my father went out to raise the money for the winery, going all through the Nelson and all the places, mostly by Italian families, thinking they were buying into grape wine. They
never tell them this was apple wine.
It was apple wine. And I guess the only thing that really is interesting about the story is that one of the great difficulty finding customers, because the only other winery was run by the head of the Attorney General for the Conservative Party in Victoria, and he wouldn't let any other competition in. So eventually they managed to convince the Catholic Church to let them make wine, but in the meantime they finally get a sale in Alberta of the Kelowna wine, the apple wine. And my father, for the years until he died, would go about what saintly people, wonderful people, was the Alberta Liquor Control Board. And I said, why? So they said, good. He said, they're saints. Because what happened was they made their first big order of wine, apple wine, to Alberta. Wonderful. About $5,000 sale, saved the winery, except for one thing. After 6 months, every bottle blew up on the stand, on the shelves in Alberta. So I said, well, what was so great about the Alberta Liquor Control Board? He said, they're saints. So they're saints. I said, why? They never asked for their money back. And to this day, until he died, we would always drink a salute to the
Alberta Liquor Control Board.
That was what my dad thought about them. But the winery starts, grows, gets bigger, and of course what really happened was that though it started in 1931, it was the impact of the war on drinking habits, because nobody drank wine except the immigrants.
The immigrants. It's a cultural thing.
Oh, absolutely. Nobody drank wine. Even the English did not drink wine with their meals. They would have some port, some sherry, but nobody bought wine except all these people who lived down in the north end of Kelowna at that time. The Italians, the Germans. And
they made their own, probably.
And a lot of them made their own. But that was the beginning of the wine that grew and grew and grew. It grew primarily because at that stage, it had been started by Mr. Getzi. His son became the head of the winery, but around that time, after the end of the war, we as the family moved in, my brothers and myself, and we were the ones that started to work to build into the winery. And we did it by probably the easiest or the best way that we could think of. We went down, looked at Gallo wines, and said, everything they'll do, we're going to copy. So every label was a Gallo-type label. Every bottle was a Gallo-type bottle. And so the winery continued to grow, and it became the largest winery in Canada.
Remarkable. Also, when you were down in California, you discovered that the coming thing was shopping centers, a shopping mall.
Yes, that had happened before, yeah, about the same time. My brother had gone down to university there, didn't make it at all. I think they threw him out after the first year. I don't think he even went for the full year, but he came back with this vision that there was such a thing as a shopping mall, and that, and this is where I give my father the absolute credit. Though we built it, my father was the one who grasped the fact that this was a dream that would give him everything, and that he had to risk his entire fortune. And I am talking about a fortune at that time, because, and there goes a funny story with it. The amount turns out to be about $1 million.
That's how much he has to raise to build this
Absolutely.
mall.
We raised it through the Bank of Montreal. The other banks had all turned us down. The Bank of Montreal came, saved our whatever you want to call it.
Bacon.
Our ass. They saved our ass.
Fine.
And so they, the day comes when we finally sign the papers for the $1 million. And we, my brothers and I, are sitting with my dad in the little office, half the size of this set. And we're sitting there like that, can't believe it's happened. We have $1 million. And we look around, and my father's gone. He's out of the office, he's not even there. Can't find him, go in the back. There he is in the back. Now, he used to pride himself on his vegetables in the store. And here he is sitting, he's got these stacks of little green onions, packages of green onions, 12 to a bundle.
Yeah.
And he's sitting there taking 2 out of each bundle and forming new bundles of 10. And we said, what are you doing? We just borrowed $1 million. He said, yes, he said, we just borrowed $1 million and we got to pay it back. And he says, and you got to start somewhere.
Starting with 20% saving.
You bet, right off the bat, he made us money.
So he builds this place, you build the place. Who's the foreman? Joe's the foreman?
My brother Joe built it literally with his own hands. I mean, stories you tell of him using forklifts to put the beams in place and balancing it out because we couldn't afford the crane, you know, like
and
that.
And this is the first mall in the interior of British Columbia. Their only other one in BC is down in Vancouver.
West Vancouver. The Woodward's shopping mall that Chunky Woodward built, and ours was the second.
And the hotel came last?
It came sort of an adjunct. We built a smaller part of the hotel, then doubled the size a little bit later, and so on.
And we have tape here of
yes, you do.
Pasquale Capozzi saying, what was your philosophy about this hotel?
This is some of the dream. That's all all I always figured, to have something for Kelowna. And to me, Kelowna is only thing in my heart. So I think that Kelowna was a nice hotel.
When we decided to build, the only stipulation that was placed on us by my father was that it would be first class, that anything that went into it would be the best, whatever was done would be something that he felt that he could be proud of and that the city itself would be proud of.
And that last guy you see there, none other than the pitch man himself, Herb Capozzi. How do you feel when you look back and you can see your dad, hear him speak, know the pride that he felt about this hotel and this place?
It always has been there. I mean, we were always so close in all of the involvements of the feelings that he had.
Herb Capozzi. Look at, there they are. Look at what a fine group they are. And obviously, we got to invite you back for segment number 2 on the rest of the Capozzi family story. Thank you very much.
Nice to be here.
Just a great start story to the Capozzi story. Thanks very much, Herb, for coming in, and join us next time for more Okanagan Pioneers and Places.